Hello, I'm Doug Lemen, Communications Director here at Calvary Community Church. I'm single, widowed, and have been here at Calvary for 28 years. My wife and my daughter and I moved down here from Washington State and started attending a Calvary right away. And we have been here in many different aspects. I've been a volunteer for years and have worked now at Calvary on staff for the past 9 years. And it has been an absolute joy. This is a job that I say I've been studying for and I've been practicing for the last 40 some years and didn't even know it was a job. So just to say, God has a plan as strange as you may think, and it's awesome. So happy to be who I am, happy to be where I am, and happy to be serving him here. Let's go back to, I won't go to I was born in, but I will actually go there. I was born in the town of Normal, Illinois. So I often say that I was born normal, and it hasn't been that way since. So that kind of tells you what my life has been like. Great family. I'm the eldest of 5 boys. That was almost like living in your own gang in the alley that you owned. So we had a great time, and we're still very close, and had wonderful parents that were great Christian examples and part of the church during our whole lives. I was in the nursery at 2 weeks old and have been going to church ever since. So you count those numbers. My parents were both involved in the church for their whole lives. My dad was at one point the treasurer of the church and also the church custodian, which was an easy job for him because he had 5 boys that were free labor. So the church got cleaned because Dad was in charge. It worked out well, and we learned serving, I think, from Dad so much because that's who he was and that's what he did. Mom was the Sunday school superintendent, so if you messed up in your Sunday school class, Mom heard about it, and you then had the consequences. But a great family, all in all. Raised in Anaheim, California, and in the shadow of Disneyland. My brother was the big bad wolf, and I actually dated Snow White in high school. So the fantasy life. Didn't marry her, however, and that's a whole other story that I'll get into later. I went to college in Fullerton, and during that time, I actually won the only lottery I have won in my life, which was the Vietnam Draft Lottery. Sitting at home on the sofa, watching TV on a Sunday night, like we all did at that point, and your number comes up, 140. My mother screams, "Oh, Dougie!" And you have that moment of, oh no, this is not what I do. You know, I'm the long hair, John Lennon glasses kind of guy, and that's being in the Army was not a thing that I looked at as an aspiration. So I did, and actually one of 5 guys in that class that did not go to Vietnam but ended up in Germany, spent a year in Europe. Came back from there and went back to church on my first Sunday. My cousins were also part of that church, and as I am leaving the church to go home, I walk out into the parking lot, and my cousin drives by and stops and says hello and introduces me to the people in his car. Well, there's this girl in the back seat that he introduces me to by the name Jan, and they have been friends while I've been gone. And so we greeted each other. They take off. Well, everybody ends up at my parents' home for dinner that afternoon, and she was there as part of that. So that was really our first meeting, my wife and I. Had dinner, big crowd. It was a lot of fun. And then afterward, there's a vacant lot across the street. We go there and fly kites with the little cousins, and that was fun. And one of Jan's comments later in our marriage was, "I was just so attracted to you because you took care of all those little kids, and they all loved you so much." And I thought, I was just a little kid myself, so that was really not something I tried to do. So that was really our first experience with each other. I, on the other side of this coin, met her. She was one of the people that was part of the crowd, but that was really all there was. I was pretty slow to catch on to this. So that kind of went on with different meetings along the way at events for probably 5 months until we were together at a Christian concert, and we were next to each other, and she just kept getting closer and closer to me. And I thought, well, this is strange. Again, I don't see that. I don't feel that. I'm just there with a bunch of friends. So it took me probably about 6 or 7 months to realize that she's there. And at one point, you hold her hand, and that became sort of like a spark, and then we were on our way. She is not someone that I would have looked for as a date. I'm 6 feet tall. I dated tall blondes in all my high school and college time. And Jan was 5'4" and a brunette, and didn't fit my dream girl status, if you will. But again, God has a plan, and sometimes it's not yours. A lot of times it's not yours. And that became part of a great relationship. She actually lived probably about 30 to 40 miles away from where I was. And so we would get together now and then, and that just kept getting more and more, and it became a lot of driving. And then there was just the moment of, oh yes, this is it. This is what I want. This is what I need. And this is the woman that God has put in front of me and said, I try and listen, and God does, hey, Doug, because I don't catch on quickly. And it was obvious that this was the plan. Part of it was she was so kind. I think she was also just, from like catching my eye kind of thing. She was just so petite and sweet, but yet she was active and crazy. And for me, that's part of that adventure. Yeah, she was willing to try it, and let's go. But I think the kindness that she had toward others, and I guess you would say the ability to share their lives and be part of their lives and contribute to their lives. She had time. It was not a burden. It was not a consumer of her time. She was willing to put the time in and be part of other people's lives. So we were married. Oh, I'll deviate a little moment here on another story. Our engagement. Her parents were here, who lived in Colorado, and her brother and his family lived in the Pomona area. So I was up there for Christmas with all of them, and they were all expecting that she's getting a ring for Christmas. And I'm the kind of person that I want something that's significant to be significant by itself and not part of something else. So I was not going to give her a ring at Christmas because that was Christmas. So I gave her a 6-foot Christmas stocking that was filled with gifts. And she just kept opening, and they're all knowing that in the toe of this has got to be a ring. Finished opening all the gifts. It was great, had a wonderful time, and I went home. She later tells me that her parents and her brother and sister-in-law were all over here saying, I don't know what happened here, but you can't let this guy get away. So little did I know that I was being stalked by the whole family. So I asked her to marry me on January 6th because it needed to be its own day. So we had gone to Lowry's restaurant in Beverly Hills and had a wonderful dinner. And at the end of the dinner, I asked her if she would marry me, and she just broke into tears. Well, the wait staff was like all over that table because they feared that something had happened that was dreadful. And then, you hear the story, and now all the waitresses are there, and, it gets to be a big deal in the party, and that's not at all what I planned either. But it was a fun event. So that's just a side story. So we were married in our mid-20s and lived in an apartment in Azusa, and both working in separate locations, so there was driving going on. We lived in an apartment that was pretty much an adults-only apartment complex. And Jan became pregnant, and we realized we have to move. So let's buy a house. Now, if you can imagine these two kids that are making like $1.50 an hour wanting to buy a house, and I was raised in Orange County, so I want to live in Huntington Beach. So we go to Huntington Beach and start looking at houses. Okay, we looked at one. Outrageous. We could not afford that. So we went a little further. We went to northern Orange County, and then we went into LA County, and then we went into San Bernardino County, and we found a house in Rancho Cucamonga, of all places, before it was Rancho Cucamonga, a new housing complex, which the lady that was managing the office there just happened to take to us and said, "Oh, we will get you in here." I'm thinking, yeah, sure you will. I had the GI Bill, and we had a few bucks that were put away, and she truly pushed to make that happen. Bought a house there, basically in the desert. The last house, the last complex on the way up the hill, so it's chaparral and coyotes all the way to the end of the hill. Lived there for 9 years. It was a wonderful time to make great friends, became part of a startup church, and that was pretty amazing too. That, again, was another little story. There's lots of these that are going to drop in here, so you can do with them as you will. We went to this little church, which was a storefront, and there could not have been probably 25 people there, and it was on a Sunday night, and they started singing. Well, Jan and I both were part of the choir in the church that we were previously with, and so we're singing parts, our own parts to what the song was, and the preacher and his wife were singing the other two parts. So we had 4-part harmony going on among the four of us, and everybody else is just singing, I guess I'll say. So at that point, midway through this song, the preacher turns and says, "Why don't you two come up here?" Now, mind you, we had just walked into this place, and we don't know anybody from anybody. And why would he do that? And, oh, by the way, why would we get up and go up there? So we did. We basically sang a quartet with this song, and it was just awesome. Well, at that point, again, "Hey, Doug, this is the church you need to be in." And so we were there for like 9 years, had a wonderful time, started a building program, and got to use some of the things that were my gifting through that, and that was pretty amazing too. So again, God had a plan that put us in a place where he could use us and where we could be part of a community that really was encouraging and uplifting to us as well. So we were there for a while, then moved down into Long Beach, and were there for a number of years. Again, another wonderful church. Again, did great things, had a wonderful time being part of the programs and the opportunities there. And then we moved to the state of Washington in the Seattle area for about 5 years. Worked for a department store there doing merchandising, and the department store actually fell apart and filed Chapter 11 and went out of business. So I now have moved up there, bought this, my wife's dream home, if you will, living in this great place, and I have no job. And I have no job for probably 6 months now. I wanted to be a store designer for Starbucks because they were moving quickly everywhere. And I have resumes that they probably wallpapered several of their offices in, but nothing back to me. At a point, 6 months through this process, I get a call from Disney saying, "We want you to come down here and interview for a job." Why? I don't live there. It's too far to drive, and I love where I am. So I said no. That went on for probably another month, and they called again and said, "No, we're really serious. You need to come down and talk to us." So I thought, I got nothing else going on. So I went down there and chatted with them, and I got home, and they called and said, "We want you to come down here and take this role." So I thought, well, we'll have to pray about that one because that's a really big step. Well, again, God didn't really give me a choice. It was, you have no job, and here is a job. What are you waiting for? And so came down here, worked with Disney for 10 years. It was a great move. We had moved, however, from here up there to a wonderful place that was green and lush and filled with trees and amazing house with a backyard that looks like the Rose Parade float had pulled in and parked there with flowers everywhere. And now you want me to move to dead, brown, chaparral-covered hills in Southern California. We were not really happy. Well, she was less happy than I was. I had a job, so I was okay. So we come down here, and another one of those things where, God has a plan, but you don't see it right now. Bought a house that was great for us. Our daughter was a junior in high school, so she had 2 years left there, which she absolutely hated because in her mind, up in Seattle, she was the most beautiful, the most popular, the most talented girl in the school. Now, granted, that was her view of what school was like up there. Westlake High School down here, not so much. She, first of all, didn't have a car. Secondly, the car she didn't have was not a BMW, and everybody else did, and so therefore she was nobody. Ran the dance team up there at high school, came down here, couldn't even get in. So yeah, not good, sad situation, and you're thinking, I've ruined the family. It went on. She made it through. She graduated. We were happy to have that over. She wanted badly to go to Pepperdine. Well, that's really nice, except I'm, okay, instead of making $1.50, I'm making $2 an hour now. So and that's give or take. We can't afford Pepperdine. And oh, by the way, her grades were not necessarily Pepperdine quality. So, you say, yeah, that's really nice. And again, someone on the admissions team over there said, oh, we'll take care of you. And I thought, well, thank you so much, but that really has no merit here because it's not going to happen. So we get to the place where, I'm feeling bold, and I said, if you get accepted, we'll give you a semester there and you can see how it goes for you, thinking she's not going to qualify. She gets the letter that you are admitted to Pepperdine, and you have that shock of, well, that's really nice for you, but who's writing that check? So there you are. We get ready. It's time to write the check. That money is in the bank. Okay, I didn't put it there. Possibly I did, but I didn't know that I had that much money in that bank. So there's a check to write to Pepperdine to get her in school. It was the most amazing move for her. She went to school in August. We didn't see her until Thanksgiving, and she's 14 miles away because she had such a great experience there, had wonderful girls that she was connected to who are now great women of faith, one of them is the women's pastor at Azusa Pacific College. I mean, they were so supportive, and they started going to church together there. Again, it was now her relationship with Christ, and it was her faith. It was not mom and dad's, and that was so exciting to see. So again, God had a plan, which was awesome. So she graduates in 4 years, and oh, by the way, there were several checks that need to be written. There were several, I'm calling them God deposits at that point, because we don't know how this is happening. Yep, apparently what I was putting in was multiplying, and it was doing well. So we were excited about that. She graduates. She heads off to start working. She's dating these guys, and, as the dad, you have this picture of who is this man that's going to be your son-in-law, and she finds this guy who is not my picture of who's going to be the son-in-law. And you meet him for the first time, and nicest guy in the world, but, well, first of all, he doesn't wear Ralph Lauren polo button-down shirts, so how good can he be? He seems very kind, but, what's his backstory? So, you do all the research you can. But I will tell you, he is the greatest husband, the greatest dad, and God had a plan. So that's been amazing. And then, through this whole thing, you get to see them grow together. They have a child, and then following another one, great parents, and these are great grandsons, not great grandsons. They are terrific grandsons. And to me, that's one of my coolest jobs is being Papa. So you get to do stuff that you can only do with grandchildren, and that's pretty amazing. So along this journey, Jan is diagnosed with lung cancer. Never smoked, never been around hazardous materials. I mean, a number of things that could have been causes for this just really did not show up. And so she was told that she would probably have 2 years to live. So that stops you in your tracks, and you pray diligently, and all your friends, and clearly all of her prayer groups, which she was involved in here at Calvary. She continues on, and she was a strong lady, and she was a prayer warrior, and was really part of a lot of the missions prayer teams here at Calvary, and that was one of her joys. So through the time, chemo and all the things that go along with this, she had really taken the time here from what should have been 2 years to 5 years before she passed away. So I think partially her strength, and partially a lot of God's sovereignty in taking care of our family and taking care of her. So you come to the place where, and I'm just going to stop here for a minute and talk about that day. I'm working. I'm actually on my way to the airport to pick up her sister, because she was coming from Colorado to visit her, because she wanted to see her before she passed away. And I get to the airport, and it was one of those days where somebody breached the security and they locked down the terminal. So my sister-in-law is in the terminal, and I'm outside waiting, and time is passing, and I'm thinking, we need to get home, because every moment is precious. I get a call from the caretaker saying that my wife had just passed away. And so her sister comes out. I have to tell her that, and we get in the car and we go home. I get home, and you talk about relationships, and you talk about your church caring for you. There were elders from the church sitting in my living room. My small group is sitting in my living room. I could not have been more loved by those people at that moment. I'm in a place where I don't know what's happening. It's something that you have looked at for the past number of years that eventually will happen. But like I say, you don't study for it. It just happens. And there it is. And these people were just amazing. And, what do I do next? I don't know what I do next. They took care of all the parts and the pieces and the details. And, I just got to be there and be loved on. So when you look at relationships that you cultivate, relationships that are important, relationships that are your family outside your family, they are so important, because not only were they there for me, but there have been times since where I can be there for them, because there have been things that are both sorrows and joys that we get to share together. So make that happen in your life. So that was a time where you now go through the funeral process, the grieving process, et cetera. And one of the things that hit me was the whole idea of having my wedding ring on and thinking about, what do I do? How long does this happen? Should I still have this in sort of a tribute? Is it something I need? Is it something that means something to other people? What am I doing for me? And do I really need to do anything for anybody else? I came back to the phrase at the wedding where you say, "Till death do us part." How flippant is that when you're 20-some years old and you're a young person in love, and you go through all the love and cherish until death do us part? Oh yeah, because we're going to live forever. We're mid-20s. And that day comes, and it's till death do us part, just parted. And now it is me. It's been Doug and his brothers. It's been Doug and Jan. It's been Doug and Jan and Vanessa. And now it's Doug. And who is he? And what does he do? How does he live? What else goes on? And, like the next week you get back to, you're working and you're doing whatever, but there's all those pieces of that are missing. You go home and it's your home, but you're the only one living there. You go to church and you sit by yourself. Activities. If you want to do something, I'm going to the movies. I'm going to the movies by myself. it's those things that you don't think of, you don't plan for, that you face. And I would say that part of what happened to me was the idea of God giving me strength and perseverance for the next day and the next day and the next day, because I'm a planner. You plan for the things you're going to do, but you're now at a place where the only thing I really have to plan for is I go to work and I come home, and I go to church and I come home, and everything else is kind of a question mark out there. So, you go through I guess you'd say the understanding of kind of who you are and what are the things that are important to you, and what parts of your life do you want to continue with, and what parts of your life do you need to change, because it is not the same, and you need to be you, and people need to understand who you are, not who we are. And how long do you say we before you say me? You just grow into that as it goes. But again, God has plans all the way through this and allows you to do things that grow you. There is a point after I'm working for another company. I'm working and this company goes out of business, and I am now thinking, I'm at the point in my life where I could actually retire and I could do nothing, or I could do some consulting work, or some other things that would keep me interested and active. I get a call from Curtis that says, we've got a job here at Calvary and we'd like you to do this. And I'm thinking, that's just really nice, but I don't do that. I don't do church. I'm a retailer. So I'll continue with, doing something in that vein. So I come in and we talk about what it is. Well, yes, there are some things that I have volunteered to do through the time that I've been at Calvary, which are, event things, design things, some of that, which I enjoy and I'm happy to do as a volunteer. It'd be fine if you wanted to pay me to do more of it. Good deal. But there are other things that, as the welcoming and communication part of the job, that's not what I do. I am not one of those people, or have not been, one of those people that is extrovert, sort of, out to chat with everyone and create relationships and stories along the way. That was my wife. If she would talk to you in her time with you, she'd know your entire story. She'd come home to me, tell me your entire story. I didn't need to know you. I didn't need to talk to you because she gave me everything I needed to know. So it was easy. It was simple. I could just go on and I'd know, what's happening around me. So one of the roles was, greeting people as they come into church, which I do every week. That's not something that I did naturally. That's not something that I wanted to do. And I was a little cautious of putting myself in that role and not doing well, and people feeling like, oh, he's just running through the motions of this, and does he really care who I am, and does he know who I am, and is it just a figure that has a job? So, you start into that, and I will tell you that is probably, of all the things I do, one of the things I enjoy most in my role today. I get to know literally thousands of people that come in the door. I may or may not know them by name, but I certainly know them because I see them weekly. I certainly know them because they're willing to share their story with me. And I'm able to connect them to other people as well, which is a joy for me because I get to see what God's doing in their lives. I'm also someone that seeks volunteers. So I have people who come up to me, unsolicited by the way, who say, I've been here at Calvary for a while and I want to do something. I want to get involved. So, my question to them is usually, well, who are you and what does that mean? And what do you want to do? They start unfolding their story and telling me who they are and what they've done and what the opportunities are that, they could share their gifts with Calvary. And it's amazing. I will tell you of one story where a guy walks up to me and says, I would like something to do. I just retired. I've got time on my hands and, I want to get involved. And I ask, well, who are you and what do you do? Well, I was a rocket scientist. Well, at that moment, I laughed because we all hear the story of, well, that's not rocket science. Well, this was. And I said, I don't know what to do with you, but that's great. And trust me, God has a plan. We'll have a story. This guy, 2 weeks later, comes in and helps design what Christmas is for that year, brings me CAD drawings of what it is. And I then turned to him and I said, okay, this is now your project. He goes, oh, no, I can't do that. I said, you just did it. I said, God brought you here to do this, and you did it, and now it's just installation. So we worked on that together. He is one of my great friends here at Calvary, and I truly believe that God moves people for his glory to be something that enhances other people within this congregation as well as outside here within our community. And that is such a joy to know somebody from, I just met you, to see how you have blessed so many others. So again, the job that I didn't want to do, God has a plan. Doug, leave yourself open, because he's going to tell you. He's going to show you. So leave yourself open. Listen to him and be available. My wife passed away 13 years ago this year, and it continues to be a story of understanding and learning how this works in my life, being alone. God has taught me a great deal about being me and who I am and what he has for me, which is amazing. But there are still those times where you long for her, you miss her, you want to turn and share a story or share an activity, and you just kind of pull it in and know the joy that would have happened had you been able to do it. And I think that's part of what that is. My mother passed away at 62 years old when I was in my mid-30s, and my dad was alone at that point. My wife passed away at 62 years old, and I was alone at that point. And so I gained a great deal of, I guess you'd say, knowledge and compassion from my dad. He was living up in Montana, and not long after my wife passed away, I went up and just spent a week with he and my stepmom. He remarried 10 years after my mother passed away, just to be with my dad. But a wise man. He was a wise guy too, but that's another story for another time. And have him, he really just shared what it was like. What were those first months like? What were those first years like? How did he cultivate new relationships? What were some of the things that he missed? What were some of the things that he had opportunities to do something different than he would not have? And for me, that was a great healing. It was also like a living textbook, because, we don't necessarily plan for what happens after your spouse passes away. You got all kinds of plan of, we're going to grow old together and this is going to be amazing. We'll take walks, we'll take picnics, we'll travel. No, that's not happening. So what is happening? What can happen? So my dad was very instrumental in me having a greater understanding of who I was and what I could do at this point, which I thought was important. And again, another one of, God had a plan that was maybe a little stranger than some of the other plans that I thought he'd had, but clearly he had provided for me to have an understanding and for us to have a different relationship than we have had as father and son for our previous lives. So that was important to me, as well as very instrumental in my growth at that point. I would say that part of the process of learning my life in the past 13 years since Jan passed away is learning about relationships with others. You miss the relationship you have with your spouse because it's close, it's honest, it's enduring every day, you don't really have that with anybody else. And so your relationships need to fill in the places where you've missed out on your marital relationship, from the standpoint of there are people that you connect with because they're creative. You're connecting with people because they're a wonderful spiritual emphasis and mentor to you. People that are kind, people that are caring, people that are just fun and funny, people that are adventuresome. And so God has brought into my life a number of people who have fulfilled different pockets of what a relationship can be with others. And I would say part of the joy of that is God has brought people into my life that are my, I'm going to say, friend groups that are in various aspects of relationships as well as age and demographic. I have a great group of young adult friends. I have a great group of young married and people that have small kids. I have a great group of my peers. I have a great group of people who I have been with as part of small groups and ministry groups throughout my time here at Calvary. And you gain so much from each of those because they're each individuals that have pieces of what God knows I need, pieces of things to inspire me, pieces of things to educate me, and also relationships that I can be part of where I can do the same, where I can lend, if you will, hopefully some inspiration, some creativity, some joy, some great opportunities to just go out and eat and have fun together because I love food. What are the things that bring you joy, and how can you take that and bring joy to somebody else because you have the opportunity to do that? There are so many things I do, including what I do here at Calvary, that I would not be able to do today if I was still married. Because you have that responsibility, you have that relationship, you have that, if you will, consumption of time together that you hold dear. Without that, I have time. I have time to do all kinds of things. One of the questions that I've pretty much asked since I became a widower is, what are you doing with your time? Because you can certainly waste it on binging Netflix forever. You can certainly waste it on going out to multiple activities. You can waste it just by sitting on the sofa or sitting in the backyard. You know, am I exercising? No, that's a problem. So there's stuff to be done. What are you doing with it? And how much of that are you bringing to yourself as things that you need, that you go cultivate? And how much of that time are you using to do that for someone else, to speak into their life, to become part of a relationship that is giving and taking? Again, knowing people, knowing stories, knowing needs, sharing with each other. That, I think, is probably one of the things that I have really cherished in, I guess I'd say, my time alone, is being part of other people's lives, because it brings me such joy, and I get to see the joy in their life, and hopefully I'm adding to that joy. Let me share a verse with you. This has meant a great deal to me in this time. It's Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That doesn't mean that I'm going to turn into a superhero. That means that it's Christ in me, Christ strengthening me to be able to endure, persevere, be available, cultivate relationships, all the things that you need in your life to be who Christ has designed you to be. It's not about me. It's about what Christ is doing in my life and how I am able to endure that life and share that life with somebody else. Something I would say about being single or living a single life is, again, part of what I say so many times. God has a plan. God has a plan that may not be the one that we have dreamed up. I'm a great planner. I had a great plan. Not necessarily the plan I have today. God had something better. God was ready for me to do something else. God had given me gifts, desires to be able to do something that I didn't even recognize. Hang on. Be ready. You may be single for a time, and God has a plan for someone for you. You may be single for a long time, and God has a plan for someone for you. You may be single for ever. What does God have for you? God has a plan for you at that too. God has something that will bring joy to your life, will bring joy to others, will keep you excited about your walk with Him because it continually becomes new every day. As we look at our desires, as we look at our plan, I would say be ready. Be ready for what God has got. It may be big, bold, powerful. It may be smaller, kind, compassionate. But He knows you. You are His child, and He has something for you. I think part of building relationships after you are alone and out of a relationship that you have had for some time, our marriage was 35 years, is the ability to let people in. There are people that want to be part of your life, even if you don't feel that way and you are okay being alone for a while because you just need to gather yourself, heal, whatever that would be. But people want to be part of your life. And I became somewhat guarded from that in that I was still trying to collect myself and understand myself. And you had a few close people who, you would spend time with, but to let other people into your life becomes exposure. And I think after a relationship ends, you're guarded for that exposure because you still have some level of, I guess you'd say, rawness or maybe hurt where you don't want to expose that. You really don't want people to know that that's where you are. At least I didn't, because that may have been pride. That may just have been, I don't want to deal with the stories and the conversations that need to be part of that. But I would say that what I learned was allowing people into my life brought not only connections, relationships, and friendships, but also little bits of joy, little bits of adventure, little bits of interest, little bits of excitement. So you began to feel your life building up again because you were part of somebody else. Now, granted, it wasn't somebody else. It was many somebody else's that brought many pieces of their life into yours and helped fill it up in a way. Some people to have conversation with, some people to just spend some time with, some people to go someplace with. Little bits of that built up part of the, I guess you'd say, part of the time and the interest of your life where you didn't have to go to dinner alone. That was a frightening thing the first time because you're sitting in a restaurant by yourself and all you can think of, well, me, everybody looking around going, what is wrong with that loser? He's got to eat by himself. You need to get over that. You need to move on to the next thing. And the next thing is there may be somebody that wants to take you to dinner. Do that. Start those conversations. Have that time. Because every one of those little mini relationships, I'll call them, can build to something bigger and can also build into you by them sharing what they have with you and filling your life. Be open.